A very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief live on Channels Television. We're broadcasting from Lagos, Nigeria. As I always say, it's the nation's commercial nerve center. I'm Jeffrey Uzoma. Of course, I'm not alone. I'm with my people. They don't like me calling them goons, so I'll leave it at that.
Yes, it's another day to take chances. And if we must seek improvement, we must take chances. And this is the program that arms you with information that you can use, that you set out and make the right choices. Welcome to your perfect morning starter right here on Channels TV. I am Bukola Koka. So, Jeffrey, what are you tracking?
And, of course...
Oh, Kayode joins us.
You forgot him for a moment.
Jeffrey is tracking me at this point. But it's okay, Bukola. I forgive you. From the nation's capital, Abuja, good morning. Welcome to this side of the nation. This is the political capital, just a few kilometers away from the presidential villa. I'm Kayode Okikelu, and I can tell you that the nation's capital is agog with lots of activities, understandably. But maybe we'll come to Lagos first and talk about the economy and all of the things happening around there, guys.
Absolutely, sir. I know that politics is playing out. I know that I think the APC has their national summit today with all the big stakeholders. So our eyes are on that as well. But Bukola and Kayode, one of the things I've been tracking is this meetings that leaders have been having with President Donald Trump. I remember the one he had with Macron, and then the very one he had with Zelensky, and recently with Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa, I mean, South Africa's president. There has been back and forth as to the response of the South African president. But I think he acted in the best way he could under the circumstance. If you know Trump too well, look, I like Trump for a few things, but I don't like him for a couple of other things. I like him because when he wants to get something done, he gets it done. But when you talk about diplomacy and tact, he's very far from Trump. Trump sometimes is borderline narcissistic, he's borderline racist on that. And so people have been commenting on all of this. And sometimes loud doesn't mean logic in that sense. People wanted maybe Cyril to drag himself or to be dragged into the murky waters of those back and forth arguments like happened with Zelensky. But he just was stating the obvious from what he knows about issues around oppression of white people or genocide that is unverified in that sense, and he was trying to be as calm as possible to explain himself to him. So I just feel that at some point, maybe whether these world leaders will just avoid Trump, since he wants to live in his own bubble and his protectionist ideologies of the world. The way nature has distributed resources is antithetical in that sense if you want to be protectionist, because you can't survive all on your own. But at the end of the day, Trump, I understand, is America first ideology, but sometimes it takes it too far. And America may have to learn one way or the other sooner or later. But I commend Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa, for not dragging himself in. Some people may not agree, but when a man is behaving like that, just leave him to himself, explain yourself, because loud, in my view, doesn't mean logic. Bukola.
Well, you know, beyond our borders, I'm concerned about what's happening at home, as always. And it's, you know, concerning just as it is, you know, I wouldn't say impressive now, but satisfactory to see that the youths of the Northeast, you know, are rising to the occasion and demanding security in their region because of what seems to be a return, you know, a resurgence of Boko Haram. And, you know, yesterday on the floor of the Senate, there was a back and forth over whether it was within its jurisdiction to call for the establishment of a military formation, you know, in Hong local government area of Adamawa State, which we had believed, you know, had exited the insurgency period. But we see now that beyond Borno, Adamawa is also beginning to witness some form of attacks. But more importantly, you know, than the back and forth on the floor of the Senate, we should see a resolve, a sense of alarm, a sense of urgency by the legislative arm of government, demanding greater accountability from the executive on the management of security in Nigeria's northeast, not just in the northeast, in the north central. especially as it is moving further beyond the north central into the southwestern part of the country. We should be seeing the Senate Committee on Defense interrogating the budget defense and asking questions about why the armed forces are not as equipped as we would we should be seeing it as it tackles insurgency, and about why reports are to the effect that these insurgents are better armed than Nigeria's armed forces, why we're witnessing attacks on military formations. That's what we should be seeing the National Assembly doing, more than the back and forth on jurisdiction of the establishment of military formations. We hope to get better results in terms of the management of security in Nigeria's northeast in the short term rather than the long term. Coyote.
Yes. So a lot to track, but what do we have for you on the show this morning? We're starting off with the conversation around food. Yes, inflation is not where it used to be, not where it certainly should be, but food has taken a major hit. You have states in Nigeria whose food inflation is around 30%. Well, I can tell you that the nation's capital, Abuja.
And of course, that's not all we'll be looking at today. We're going to explore the issues around marketing, but focus will be on branding. I know that Nigeria is working on managing its reputation, but as an individual or as an organization, what exactly is it about branding that can, engender loyalty? That's a big question our guests will be responding to today on the program.
And beyond that, we we focus on what seems to be the defining subjects shaping the heartbeat of the polity, and that would be constitutional reforms, ethnic divisions, corruption, weak institutions. Those topics will form, the big conversation on today's edition of the program, and we'll be having, someone, to bear his mind on these issues.
Okay, guys. So from here we head down to what the trends are saying, the dailies on the pages of social media. That's where we just start off from. So let's get started with maybe something a little bit more exciting. A lot of the time there's a lot of complaints over this, that, and the other. So perhaps let's start with football, where we saw a video of our very own superstar. His energy is 1,000%. Victor Osimhen there, giving his jersey to a fan that a Nigerian flag gives him the fan gave him a Nigerian flag while he gave the fan a jersey. So Victor Osimhen plays in Turkey, in Galatasaray, with Galatasaray, and he's led them to victory. I think they've not won this for about 5 years, just like Napoli hadn't won it for 33 years in Italy. So 3 seasons apart, he's been able to lead the club he features in or he plays for to victory. So what is the future of this great guy, Victor Osimhen? But the highlight today is about that relationship he has with this very energetic, enthusiastic fan. If you see where they call his name, you will love it. Victor!
I imagine that this fan is going to perhaps, hang this jersey in a very special place in his wardrobe, and make it a sort of artifact for his children for years to come. Imagine getting a jersey from Victor Osimhen, one of Africa's finest.
He's one of our finest. We're
yes.
super proud of him. He gives his 1,000%. So, Kayode, maybe you have the next one. Maybe you also comment on this and give us the next one.
The love that Victor Osimhen is getting in Galatasaray and the country at large. I know a lot of people are a bit cautious, hoping that what happened at Napoli would not happen again, but hey, he's on loan. So we look forward to what the future holds for Victor Osimhen. But let's come back home, right, and talk about this incident in Lagos State. So amidst all of the conversation around the state of environment in Lagos and other parts of the country, the Lagos State government arrested a man for illegal waste dumping, which is caught on camera at Alakpere Link Bridge. I mean, just look at that. That is not Father Christmas. It's not dropping gifts for children. I mean, that is trash. And what is quite concerning is the fact that this doesn't look like a place that you will want to throw trash around. I mean, this is a very serene environment, right? But because it's a bridge, there's water, people think, let me let the water do the thing. It's really sad. And I can tell you that you have Nigerians right now who are driving in the best vehicles that will roll down their window and just toss trash out any moment. And you wonder, come on, what's going on? So this is what we find around. So as much as we speak to government to enforce, we also have to speak to people to let common sense prevail. This is our environment. We have to protect it. And there's been a lot of comments on that one, that video. You see this one. We have Overcome on X saying, and then they'll go on social media to say Lagos is smelling. So naturally, this will be linked to that controversial topic around Lagos and the environmental situation. Guys?
You know, and the last I checked, Coyote, the Loma trucks are still functioning, even effectively, in many parts of Lagos State. So that is totally unjustifiable. And even if there's some form of delay or, an absence of, the Loma trucks, there should be a form of intervention in that space by the community development associations in that area, such that there isn't indiscriminate dumping of refuse. That conduct is totally condemnable. But let's go on to the next video this morning, and this time around something pleasant yet again. Sometimes you just want to take a break from the sad news. So we have the dancing governor of Osun State, Governor Ademola Adeleke, presenting to the president's chief of staff a gift of adire, I believe. Yeah, that's it. That's the video there.
Yeah, I think what was funny is not just the presentation of the gifts, it's the exchange. I was explaining to him the history of adire and all of that, and just cracking the chief of staff up. Maybe we can listen to one or two things he said.
Let's do that.
Yes! I'm not going to judge you, man. I don't mind. But I want you to recognize and give us the credit that Adire is the source. Oshogo, that's no Ike Gallery. He's celebrating his 74th birthday. We are hosting him. So this Adire, I want you to show it. We wear it every Wednesday. Don't do for me. Every Wednesday. I want somebody who's writing it down.
A very jovial presentation. The guy is just a jolly good fellow. All dancing, always happy in that sense. Sometimes I wonder whether he's ever sad. But let's also show you about the federal government placing a 5 million naira bounty on fleeing inmate from Ilesha prison. We've had this time and again different times. So the federal government is not taking anything to chance. So these are the inmates that fled from Ilesha prison, and they are on the lookout. So in case you know them or see them or find them, whatever it is, the federal government needs your help to be able to report them to the nearest police station so they can be rearrested if they fled. They haven't been freed by any court of law, which means that they are still in custody of the Nigerian prison or correctional center in this sense.
Well, Jeffrey, as far as, prison breaks or accidental releases are concerned in the Nigeria Correctional Service, there should be greater accountability, considering the number of breaks that we've experienced and those that have escaped, and not all have particularly, been found and returned to the prison. And, sometimes I wonder if this has anything remotely related to the increase, in crime rates that we've experienced in different regions of the country, the Northeast to be precise, even the North Central in recent times. So beyond this, we should have a roll call of inmates that have not returned to the prisons, and they should be published, such that there should be a better hunt of these convicts.
Okay. Okay, let's get to the dailies. What are the dailies saying? This Nigeria is where we start off from. Northeast under terrorist siege. Senators raise the alarm again. This is at the riders direct military to intensify action in Adamawa, Yobe, Borno, that's the south, the northeastern part of the country, where fresh attacks have left dozens dead, communities destroyed, and thousands displaced. This is why we raise concern, Bukola, all the time. It looks like there is a roving attack on the Nigerian state. Northeast was the hub at some point. It escalated down to the northwest. And then, of course, the north central has been on fire for literally all the time. And then there was a bit of a relief in that sense in places like Adamawa, but now it's back there. It started with Borno and those communities that were ransacked and they were literally brought to his knees, where the governor is saying out of 300 or so communities in Marate, about almost 98% have been taken over, and he was saying they should not allow Marate to fall. So we don't know what is responsible, but there are layers. I haven't spoken to security agencies on the shows that we have, from political to insurgency to criminality to farmer herder to all kinds of shades of crisis in that sense. I just feel we do not need a national security summit to solve it. We need to just act. Let's not waste money gathering people to talk and talk and talk and talk and what will happen next. We already have a talking chamber. Those chambers are two. National Assembly made up of House of Reps and now the Senate. Those are the talking chambers where they talk and produce legislation and move resolution. So let's leave it at that. Converging any other person, in my view, is just a waste of our funds. Cardi.
Oh, absolutely. And naturally, the Vanguard also leads with security or insecurity. It's a statement from the governor of Borno State, as you said earlier on, Babagana Zulum, saying Boko Haram informants among politicians, soldiers, says army lacks necessary equipment to battle tech-savvy terrorists. So that is like tech terrorists, tech bro terrorists in this sense. You see, DHQ keeps mum. Our borders porous, says, or rather some insurgents are not Nigerian, says Akpabio. And Senate warns insurgency will spread farther in north and beyond if unchecked. It looks like we're back full circle to where we were before 2015. And I keep saying that what are the gains then if, as you said earlier on, the governor says in Marte, just one community is standing. That's local government. That's not an ungoverned space. Right. We dealt with it in the Northwest during the previous administration, but it looks like it's back to where it started. Something clearly is not right here, and I'm not sure I see that sense of urgency. Maybe government knows something that it's not telling us, because you could see here, DHQ keeps mum. So is this a case of, well, you don't talk when you're working, or they're still trying to figure it out? These are questions that Nigerians, particularly the people of Borno State, need answers to. But that's how the Vanguard leads this morning. Bukola.
From there, let's head over to Blueprint newspaper this morning, and it chooses a different path, just as we've seen time and again with the front pages. Take a look at the big story on the front page. Wike's 85% 2024 budget implementation impressive. That's ascribed to the Senate, and you see just one rider there. Minister commits 85% of 1.78 trillion naira 2025 appropriation bill to abandoned projects. That's just one rider there. So the Minister of the FCT is getting a thumbs up from the Senate. But perhaps we should interrogate, this budget performance a bit closer to find out indeed if all the deliverables check out, especially when you consider time and again calls by the opposition for greater investment in the education sector. I'm talking about the presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 election. Time and again he visits the IDP camps in the FCT, and what we see there is, beyond satisfactory? So, is there an equitable distribution, of the revenue from the budget to all sectors, particularly the important sectors that require it, and particularly following revelations from, the report for the 2025 budget by Budget, the civic tech organization. So there's a need for better tracking of budget performance of the states, including the FCT, beyond what the government is telling us. Yeah,
it's a big budget. I just wanted to see the sources of revenue because it's ambitious. 1.7 is the second largest after Lagos of 3.3. And then next to Niger, which I don't know, once I accomplish is 1.5, and then Ogun has about 1.05. All of those, there are about 4 budgets that are in the region of trillions of naira. But how do we meet the revenue point? But Wiki has done big things in Abuja in terms of infrastructure. What other sectors is where the question is, and proper scrutiny to make sure that the right things are done with our monies is more important. Maybe we'll have another day to have that conversation with these people. But that's as much we can take as far as the dailies are concerned.
Food is important, perhaps one of the most important things to life. And that's why we're starting off the show with this all-important conversation: food, agriculture, the whole value chain. And yes, we're joined on the program by Buffy Okeke-Ojudu, who's the CEO of Zebra Agro Industries. Good morning, and welcome to the program.
Morning, and thank you for having me.
You operate in like the most important sector, so there's a security area of things, and then I think food even ranks higher than security, because whatever the case, you need to put food in your stomach for you think or do anything, right? And I just want to start with a statement from one of the governors in Nigeria that said that Nigeria is rich in agriculture, does not have a business with poverty. And that's almost like cliche. Nigeria is rich in crude oil, doesn't have a business with poverty. Hey, Nigeria is rich in human resources, doesn't have a business with poverty or leadership challenges. So this is something we hear time and again. Yeah, we have potential. We're such a great nation, arable land. But when you come to the brass tacks, it's not what it ought to be. So what is the missing link for you? And I want to start by asking you to respond to that age-long thing around someone is trying to attack Nigeria's food, food resources. So it's a targeted thing to destabilize Nigeria. Is that defeatist? Because yes, someone would always try to attack you.
True. So I don't even think that it's as much someone trying to attack us as it is we not creating systems that work with our natural way of doing things. So like many sub-Saharan African countries and like other sectors in Nigeria, we have adopted a model from other countries and applied it here. So industrialized agriculture, centralized processing facilities, large silos, massive silos. But in truth, over 70% of our people are involved in agriculture, of which over 80% are smallholder farmers. So the model that would work for us is a more decentralized model, smaller, closer to the places where the production is happening. If you have large units of storage or processing around the major townships, how is the smallholder farmer supposed to get it there? How is he supposed to move his 1 or 2 bags, either to store or to sell? We talk a lot about our production problem, which, yes, insecurity affects that as well. Yield per hectare, yes, there's that. But in truth, what we produce, a significant portion of that rots away anyways. Anywhere between 40 and 60%, some say 70, depending on the commodity. So let's even get to a point where what we're even producing makes it to the market. And the way to do that is to create smaller infrastructure, local governments, town by town, where production is happening, closer to the farmer.
I remember that during the previous administration, there was a huge rice pyramid in Abuja, obviously for optics largely, just so that we're producing a lot. But what has become of that today? So I think there's the need to just show that something is happening on the one hand. Government just wants to show something without maybe necessarily sitting down and saying, let us really critically think through the process. And I think you said it, that we don't maybe look for what works for us. We're not trying to use what works for us. So if 7 out of 10 of us is a farmer, it means that none of us should be hungry in that sense.
Exactly.
Because at least one of the 7 will have more than enough to share with the other 3, and naturally food should go around. So maybe we should break it down further, right? So you have a place like Kaduna that produces corn. There are tomato industries in Kaduna as well. But there was a time that tomato was really out of reach. You have rice being produced in Nigeria in large quantity. And the price of rice has been beyond reach. Now it's coming down.
It's coming down because of importation.
Yeah. So again, I want us to, troubleshoot this, because there's a Ministry of Agriculture. The states also have their ministries of agriculture. So is it a government? Is it a mismatch in terms of policy or what?
I think so. We place a lot of burden on governments in Nigeria, and we assume that government should solve all the problems. You look at the West. Not to say that the West is the best model, but you look at the way that they operated, use the United States back in the day. A lot of the core infrastructure that was built there was built by private sector. Government is an umpire, really. Sort of creates the framework that allows private sector easily plug in, right? Because if you think about the reason why we would need quick fixes and quick shows of workings, it's because government, 4 years, 8 years, you don't have enough time to bridge some of these gaps, right? If you're going to build infrastructure, local government by local government, sometimes town by town, that's not a government. That will take a very long time. So was there ever a time we got this right? Yes. If we think about the 60s, and I keep saying this, right? 50s, 60s, our golden era of agriculture. We had a system that worked. You had farm settlements, which the regional governments would work to create farm settlements. The farm settlements obviously would encourage everything pre-production, right? Down to production. So farmers were able to just plug into that. Then you had the produce buyers. Produce buyers were people who were licensed to buy at sometimes set prices, in the same way you have an oil lifting license now. Now, because those prices were predetermined, the government then had marketing boards. The marketing boards would then work with the produce buyers, who were either processors or traders, to sell that commodity locally, within the continent, or internationally. The government then set the marketing board offices in different countries. So you go to London, they had one, etc. End to end. So you could just easily come and invest and plug in and understand that the entire value chain was set. That's why it worked. To a great extent, that was also a system somewhat adopted or inherited from the British, who originally, etc. But we know how the story goes. Following oil, a lot of these things sort of broke away. And then we tried to force another system that didn't really work with the way that we are, with our own idiosyncrasies, if you like.
So if we were to maybe start getting serious in that sense, not just on paper to show the workings, you've said there's a lot of burden on government, but it's understandable. You can start your business now, lots of ideas, you've invested a lot, and just one tiny policy. It just messes everything up. And you can't do anything because government is, they say, next to God, right? So as much as we place a burden on government, it's understandable because government sets the tone. I mean, investors will look to government policies.
Of course.
Are you consistent? Can we trust this government before they come in?
They're the umpire.
Before they commit their resources. So if we must get serious, because again, you have a lot of private sector people who have loose money. They want to put money into something. Some would say, well, if you trust private sector, I mean, they want to make profit, right? So sometimes they don't care. They just want to make profit. So if the rice has to be 100,000, it will be 100,000. In fact, I think it was one of the billionaires in Nigeria who was telling hoarders that you have to support in the price of rice will keep coming down.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard that.
BUA.
BUA. Yeah. He said that. So there's also private sector people who seem to be principalities and powers in their sense. So maybe you speak to what you have been able to do in that sector to sort of transform things, and are you seeing the results?
Definitely. So, you know, at Zebra, we started off building mid-scale food processing factories, a network of that. And when we built the factories, like most people who went into the processing side of agriculture, you realize there's a challenge with consistency of supply and consistency of quality. So to bridge that, we started setting up micro-aggregation centers to feed our factories.
For which of the produces is it?
Specifically
tomatoes?
Vegetable oil processing and animal feed. So soybean, oil palm, things of that nature. So when we set up these aggregation centers, we noticed that other factories around us in the industrial cluster were trying to tap into our aggregated supply. So we thought, why don't we spin this off and make it a unit on its own? And so that birthed that Zebra Crop Bank. Now, Zebra Crop Bank operates in seven states at the moment, including Cameroon. And what we found is that there's an impact assessment organization, a global impact assessment organization called 60 Decibels. So they did an assessment on us. And over 97% of the farmers who were using our services were sort of accessing a similar service for the first time. And what do? So we basically create micro solar powered storage houses directly at farm gates. Small units, the smallest about 40 tons, and then it goes all the way up, depending on the needs of the community.
Give us an example of a location and how is that making food cheaper there? Is that helping the farmers? Something we can relate to. So maybe a location and how that is really materially transforming.
For instance, we have one of them in Oshongo in Benue State. Yeah. So what you find is that not only are farmers able to store in our facilities, they're able to sell directly at farm gates. And you find that most farmers want to sell and not to store. But then when we convince them to sell half, store half, and in a couple of weeks, months, when the price is higher, we alert them and say, the price of this commodity is X. It was Y yesterday. Do you want to sell, yes or no? And then they can sell still to us. You find that the next season, they produce more. Because now they're sure that everything that they're producing is going to sell. But then farmers don't have staying power, which is why, unless they're big and organized, smaller ones don't have staying power because they're living hand to mouth. So they want to sell. So what we then did is offer credit. So with your stored commodity, we can give you 70% of the value of that commodity, right? So your commodity is the collateral. So when they then had some cash in their hands, they're more willing to store and then sell later when the price is higher, making even more money, and then encourage to produce even more the next season.
But how is that different from hoarding?
So from hoarding for the farmers, I mean, the truth is everybody's trying to make money. Farmers can't sort of live on the whims of, I mean, the reason that farmers are poor, A, they don't sell for the actual market price. They sell at the middleman price. And you know, in Nigeria, there are three prices. There's the price, not that middlemen are bad, by the way.
It's business.
It's business. There's the price that middlemen or agents, when they take trucks to the communities, buy at. That's price one. They sell that price to smaller scale they sell that commodity to smaller scale processors or export agents at a slightly higher price.
So they mark up maybe 10% or so.
Sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's a lot more, depending on how the environment is looking.
Right.
And then you have the price that it leaves Nigeria at, right? Versus the international price. Obviously, you don't really expect to get that here for all commodities. But the farmer gets the lowest price. What we then do is offer the farmer that processor price. So they are quite aware how much the processor is buying this commodity at, and they're quite aware what our margins are because we're definitely trying to make some money, right? So the farmer makes more. If the farmer knows that they can make more, they're incentivized to produce more. The farmer has to make profits. That's the truth. So if you produce enough to sell a significant volume and save a significant volume for maybe when it's off season, why not?
It's very interesting. And these are things I wish we're really sitting down to think about. And maybe you could speak to, government support or, government backing in that sense, saying, because you hear in other climes that the government will visit farmers. And I don't want to try to mention or compare. They'll visit farmers and say, what do you need? Like, what do you need? So we see that you're doing this. How can we help? Because they understand that, all of your policies, in fact, your re-election is really dependent on how much food people have on the table to say, this government is working. So they literally go to farmers and people in that value chain to ask, what do you need? So I don't know if you've had that kind of conversation, if the farmers around you have had that kind of conversation at the state, even local government, state and the federal level.
I think so. I think that in the recent past, some government policies on paper made sense. I'll give an example. The Anchor Borough program made sense, right? A lot of factories come up and the problem is source of raw material. So the Anchor Borough program was, you establish a factory, the government will work with you to provide funding for the farmers to produce in significant enough volumes to make your factory viable. That made sense. The application, on the other hand, was problematic. Some people say corruption, But then there's also a systemic problem, because how do you guarantee that the farmers sell to you at the price that was agreed after getting the support? And you can't do that if you don't have farm gate infrastructure. How are you going to do that? How are you going to aggregate those commodities? You have your, let's use Abuja as an example. You have your factory in Maitama. The production is happening in Kuje or Kwali. There's no infrastructure there. You have some agents that every once in a while go there, and you're hoping on the good graces of the farmers that the commodity will come to you at the agreed price. How is that going to happen? But if there's infrastructure, so you know, okay, this is my storage partner. This is my offtake or my primary processing partner. So the commodities come out. Farmers sun dry sometimes for 2 to 3 weeks, some of these commodities. You have the infrastructure on field that where the farming is happening. It comes out of the ground, goes into the facility, solar power drying or cleaning, whatever, bagged and stored. And then the trucking gets it to you. That sort of structure is what you would need to make it viable. So we didn't have the end-to-end. I think that was one of the problems, alongside maybe corruption.
Well, it's good that we're having this conversation. I am tempted to speak about this rice, because rice is at the center of any conversation about food in Nigeria. So the price is coming down as a result of importation.
Yes.
So is that our solution, really? So if anything is expensive, just try to import it.
I think it's a short-term solution, which in itself poses problems. You have a lot of companies that have shut down in recent times because of these importations. Not rice and maize in particular have been very hard. How much is a bag of fertilizer? You're buying fertilizer maybe 70,000, 80,000. You're now being forced to sell a bag of your commodity for like 40K. How? You can't, it's just not tenable, right? And I understand why the government would do that, because Nigeria needs to feed, but there also needs to be, or needed, maybe there is, to be a plan in place. I understand it was supposed to be 150 days, I think, that this would last. Well, let's see how long it lasts. But the long-term implications or the mid-term implications are very severe, because, first of all, a lot of people had invested a lot of money, between, we included, between last summer and now, right? Predicting almost what the market is going to be saying. Yes, you have the hoarders, but you also have the processors that set up. You have the millers.
Right.
Millers are struggling right now.
It's almost like a tussle between the consumers and the business people, the farmers right now. Everybody obviously has their interests. They want to make profit in buying it at a lower price, or at least selling at a profitable price. The onus is on government now to find a middle ground. So it's a win-win situation. But it's very interesting that this conversation is happening, and you're thinking innovatively to solve these challenges. So we should do the very best. So. We should do the very best. This is actually a very, very touchy issue. So we should do the best, and all of the support that you need from government, we hope that you get it.
Thank you.
We'll be speaking with Buffy Okeke Ojudu, CEO of Zebra Agro Industries. Buffy is your name, right?
Buffy is my name. It's
not just because of the look.
No, it's not just because of the look, but I mean, I'll take it too.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, we'll take a quick break now. Now that we've talked about food, I know a lot of people are hungry, but there's more to come for you on this breakfast show. It's a whole buffet. Stay with us.
Welcome back. And away from agriculture, let's talk about reputation. Let's talk about branding, maybe by extension, the entire gamut of marketing. I've been joined on the program by, for a second time, by the way, Abena Ike. She's a brand and marketing consultant joining us right here in our Lagos studios. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
How have
Good
you
morning. I've been great. How about you?
Very well.
Good.
So I like to start this conversation from a national perspective, because I think I learned that at the NIPRO week that held in Uyo in Akwa Ibom State. There were some conversations around reputation management of Nigeria. The jury is divided over that, apparently, when it comes to our reputation in terms of all of this. So, but one thing we can all agree on, without any doubt, is to the effect that the trust level of citizens on their government is very low. Citizens don't trust their government, and it takes a lot. In fact, I say that as soon as you join politics in Nigeria, you are regarded as a thief already. They've already said you're guilty before you even, so you have to prove that you're not guilty in that sense, unlike what the law says, that you're innocent until proven guilty. So let's start from national. Since we know the trust quotient is quite low, and citizens really want to see change, and government keeps giving them one story or the other, whether it's effective or ineffective. So from the end of government, how should government approach to ensure that citizens are loyal to country? The word we use is patriotism. Let's start from there.
Okay. So I would like to link it to marketing.
Exactly.
And the reason I like to link it to marketing, because it's no different. And the reason it's no different is because consumers lose trust when there's a disconnect between what they want or what they need versus what a brand, or in this case, a government, is doing, right? So from the marketing perspective, if you're looking, if a customer doesn't trust a brand, their experiences that the customer may have encountered, that left a poor taste in their mouths. So the brand, in this case a government, would need to take a step back and understand, okay, these are the experiences that you went through and ended up, yielding these results. How do I fix it? So it's about going back to the experiences, and I'll take it back to marketing. As a brand, the experiences that your customers, encounter is very critical. And unfortunately, we find that a lot of brands don't really pay much attention to it. The goal is what I want to achieve, what I want to put out there, and that is it. I want to, increase sales, get me what I need to increase my numbers. And it's possible that that's what we're also seeing, right? On a national level, there's a goal, which is great that there's a goal, but are citizens being taken into consideration? What citizens need being taken into consideration? And I think that's probably where the disconnect, from the national level could be coming through.
I'll give you the clear case before my colleague comes in.
Okay.
Things that brings some of this lack of patriotism that we call brand loyalty in that sense. First, citizens don't believe their votes count. Citizens also, yes, citizens don't believe their vote counts. Citizens don't see how their commonwealth is managed effectively for AKA good governance. In fact, it got so bad that the army raised a concern that, there's this quota system as to people joining the military. And the Southeast, they were screaming like, you have slot, your people are not joining the military. And the narrative was to the effect that how many of the people from that area eventually become, say, service chiefs. So that kinds of, although we have one now, but it takes a while. So we see maybe people from other parts of the country attaining that of that position. So I just giving you like 3 in terms of appointments on one hand, in terms of vote counting or not counting on the other hand, in terms of poor governance.
Yeah.
So I've given you a case study. I know it's a big burden.
Yes.
If you can help us resolve it before we come to persons and organizations.
Yes. So when trust is broken, so when you're looking at it from the national point of view, like the government experiences that you've highlighted, those are experiences that have broken trust, right? Now, in order for citizens to be able to come back and trust again, the wrongs would need to be righted, right? So, or would need to be made right. So one, if I don't feel that my vote counts, for example, why should I vote? And why would I trust that you're actually going to do what you're telling me you would do? And so on the government side or the brand side, what is critical is making sure that you're listening to what the customer or your citizens are telling you. This is what the citizens are saying. how can the government, I'm trying to stay away from politics, that's why I'm pausing. How can the government ensure that people are being listened to, but at the same time, your goals are actually being achieved? Because the government also has goals to achieve, right? But then people might also have their own views of how to think things need to be done or what they believe they need. There is certain information the government might have that we don't have, right? That might also impact the decisions that are made that we might not understand. So it's critical that there is a clear understanding of, or listening, more like the listening ear needs to be there on the government side, but also that it's critical for the government to clearly communicate what the objectives are and what they seek to achieve. And this way, both parties are clear on where it's going, so that it's not one person shouting that, I don't think that this is, delivering what I need, so it wouldn't work. And then the other person, just doing whatever they want to do because that's what it would help them to achieve their goals. At least that is, those are my views.
Well, the conversation may have taken a life of its own already for, giving this direction. And I kind of like where Jeffrey started off from, the NIPR's, strategy of setting up a Nigeria reputation management group, tasked with the responsibility of, sort of transforming Nigeria's image. And it's a very, very critical task, important task, even if, there's so many reasons why Nigeria may not necessarily have a good reputation on the international community. Now, as this group proceeds to manage Nigeria's reputation, what would be your recommendation as a branding strategy for this group? For instance, the Minister of Trade says President Bola Tinubu's many foreign trips have secured Nigeria $50.8 billion in potential investment, not in actual investment. So if this group were to be speaking to, these group of potential investors, what should it be saying, to convince them to put the money on the ground?
So first of all, I think a lot of work needs to be done in terms of fixing our reputation. And, whilst those sorts of trips might be great, at the end of the day, the average person does not look at the trips. The average person is going online to do research to find out, okay,
the investor, right?
Yes. So what is online about this person or this country? Now, if any of us goes on Google and type Nigeria, what will be the first thing that comes up? We need to go back and look at how we can also control the narrative, right? Because unfortunately, the narrative about the nation is not positive anywhere, right? So how do we take control of the narrative that is there? And one of the many ways to do that is actually going through online, digital platforms. What are people saying about us? What are the stories there about Nigeria? What are the stories there about Nigerians? Are Nigerians putting out more positive stories about the culture, about, doing business, about the way of life there? Have we done enough? Because those kinds of the big things will not necessarily be what would give us what we need, because most of the people who would actually be coming in might not be looking at that. So I think, we need to look at it on different fronts. I would suggest that let's look at it at the grassroots level. So how does our digital footprints look like? How does our digital reputation look like? Because that's where most people are going to search for information.
Let's practicalize it now. The last time you were here, we talked more basically about the theoretical aspect of branding. And we just got off a conversation with, an agri-investor in the field. And he talked about, bold strategies, at storage facilities. But we have 90% of, the practitioners in that space being smallholder farmers who may not necessarily have the capital for sophisticated infrastructure, for mechanized farming and, storage facilities in that sense. So for those farmers who may be the ones that would be projecting Nigeria positively with their little effort from where they are. Where is the place of branding in their effort, and how they can tell their stories using social media, for instance? Yeah.
So this is where I would also like to link government
Okay.
to it, right? So if government were to take a stand and say that, and then also linking it back to narratives, government can take a stand and say that, you know what, we see these smallholder farmers who are doing great work. They have great stories to tell, and their stories can positively help shape our image. We want to put them out there. The government can we can actually do, testimonials or documentaries around their experiences, the positive experiences, right? Because there are positive experiences. Let's tell those stories and put them out there. We have platforms. Social media is available. We have TV stations. And so, giving them that platform to be able to tell their stories and really elevating it and putting it out there can possibly help. So it wouldn't necessarily be the farmer putting themselves out there because they might not even have a social media platform to be managing it. But how can other stakeholders like the government, how can, stakeholders like, other organizations that project or seek to project the country in a positive light help bring these stories out there? I'm a big believer in narratives, and the narrative, whether positive or negative, can have a major impact. So what are the narratives out there about us, and how do we change those narratives? And these are some of the ways that we can influence.
So the key thing and the key word we're trying to examine today is loyalty. When we posit it on the national scene, we're talking about patriotism, but when we say it in business or personality, brand, we still say loyalty in that sense. So walk us through maybe some starter kits on how to build loyalty, because in simple terms, it simply means that I'll return again and again and again to get the experience that I got from the first time. And not everyone is able to do that, because if anybody has that guarantee, then business will survive in terms of sustainability. So walk us through, how do you build loyalty?
You said the word experience. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, a lot of brands don't like to pay attention to creating the experiences for customers. The goal is, how do I make money? How do I increase sales, right? Give me a lot of leads. I want, some really good sales qualified leads and help me convert to make money. But what is critical is the experience that you're creating. But you can't create a great experience if you don't know the customer, right? And so as a brand or as a government, you need to take time out to understand what your customer needs, what people are saying, how can I, reach them and connect with them. And then once you have these insights, you're able to take a step back and say, okay, let me personalize your experience for you. So personalization is key. So if it's a government, and the government can say, okay, Lagos State residents prefer this. Akwa Ibom residents prefer that. This is what I would like to do in all of the states to make sure that I am meeting a need. Because the customer is not going to come back to you, will not be loyal to you if you're not meeting my need. If all you're pushing out to me is what you want. And eventually, yes, I might patronize you because I need the products that you're selling. But I am not going to come back if the experience is not great. But as a brand, you create an amazing experience if you know what my preference is. And by knowing my preference, you need to do a bit of research about me. And that's how you'll be able to succeed.
And so for, practitioners in that space, those who are, selling, the very little things, that meet the needs, what strategy do you prefer for them to, put their brands forward such that they can be registered in the minds of those who have need for that particular product and keep returning?
So sometimes, it doesn't even have to be anything complicated. It could be, I'll give you an example. So I know someone who is helping build a brand. And basically what this person did was travel to various cities to understand what people, how people feel about the brand. Was able to speak to about 2,000 people, collated it in a spreadsheet with their feedback. And what the person did was to come back and produce content that speaks to what most people need. Now, what is happening now is that most of the people that are connecting with this brand feel so connected that it almost feels as if they own the brand. And when people own brands, they advocate for you. Now, going back to your question, for example, going back to your question, you know, you're able to, you can simply engage your customers and say, you know what, customer A, how are you today? What's going on with you? And identify what the customer's need is. And as a small business, you can come back and say, you know what, this is what I would like to do for you, or this is what I can do to help this customer come back. And a lot of small businesses do that. And that's how customers are able to come back to them and, you know, patronize their brands or products.
Well, thank you. Of course, we'll have to bring you back when we have and be ready again. We like to talk national issues. Maybe we'll use one state as an example at some point. Ben Ike is a brand and marketing consultant, always coming through for us when we need this expertise. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll switch gears. So cultural issues and national unity. We'll bring you that in just a moment. Stay with us.
Welcome back. And so we head over to the next talking point on the program. And it's, 6 days to May 29, or 7 days, if you like, when Nigeria begins to celebrate 26 years, I believe, of unbroken democracy. And sometimes the argument would be that, there are only a category of people that actually celebrate democracy in Nigeria, not necessarily the generality of the people. But that's on a lighter note. But on a more important note, what we should be reflecting on at this particular point in time, and of course this conversation has started already, is if democracy has actually worked. This particular type of democracy has worked for Nigerians. And there are a whole gamut of issues surrounding that. And so we're going to be having that conversation this morning as we reflect on the national question, national unity, constitution review, and the whole work. So joining us on this particular segment of the program is a senior citizen, Engineer Richard Ujadu-Gele. He's the CEO and Chairman CEO, Astromatic Nigeria Limited. He joins us right here in our Lagos studio. Good morning, sir, and thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning.
And
it's a privilege. I appreciate.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. And so the first question has already been asked, sort of, uncannily. 26 years of unbroken democracy in just a few days from now. What are your reflections when you, walk down memory lane to 1999? Has Nigeria begun to reach the promised land, or we're still far from where we're headed?
In my opinion, we're still far. The heading you put on earlier was that unity beyond tribal lines. I do not believe that we have a tribal problem. What we have is a religious problem. And that religious problem can be given in just 2 or 3 examples. There's Boko Haram. What are they about? They want to dip the Quran in the ocean. From time, they wanted to Islamize Nigeria, including our former president, who it is public knowledge in the public space that he was the chairman or the negotiating personnel for Boko Haram, although he quickly denied. But what has come out of it? What did our Muslim leaders say when, what was her name, Dorothy in Sokoto? The girl that was killed in Sokoto?
Yeah. Yes.
What did they say? Nothing. We need to first solve our religious problem remove religion.
Deborah, you should say.
Okay, Deborah, yes. There's a case in Maiduguri. Why would a man that was defending himself was told to run away? Why was that? Because a sect wants to take over the religion in Nigeria. What happened in, was it Ekiti, where in a church, they went there and killed people. So the problem we have is religion, and it has to do with Christians, pastors who can't talk, who do not have the liver to talk truth, to not just power, to religion. There are people in the north who preach every day that the rest of us are infidels. So,
but is it a function of, or is it a malfunctioning of democracy, the religion or religious question?
The religious question is a function of greed, because when something happens, have you seen postings from the Fulanis who say they want to come and take over Nigeria? Have you heard the governor of Benue, Bauchi, who said they have invited all Fulanis to come to Nigeria? Have you, and they say all they do is monetize. So I believe, unfortunately, it's my personal belief, that Nigeria should split. It's going to be, it's a hot cake discussion, because many people are paying lip service.
But the question is, well, of course, it's your opinion.
Yes.
We'll put it out there. It's not the opinion of the station in that sense, because we're one indivisible nation, and the Constitution is very clear on our unity in that sense. But let's even piggyback on that. People have also argued that going our ways or our separate ways in that sense doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to be able to resolve our problems, because some of these problems are beyond endemic. So let's even say, come down south. Even within states, you can see that, dichotomy. Then you will now know, oh, I'm from this ethnic nationality as against this ethnic nationality. Look at what is going on in Rivers. We can go and go on and on. So do you think that division is really an answer if we want to take it to that extreme? That is not a conversation in that sense. How would that even solve any problem?
Okay, first, the biggest problem, again, is religion. We can resolve ethnic divisions. Pa Adebanjo died recently, and people came to Ijebu-Ogbu, and they were singing Ijebu anthem. They want Ijebu State. And that Ijebu State will leave the Egbas. So the problem will always be there. All we need to do is discussion. But in the case of religion, where one religion says, take the Quran or I kill you.
So let's posit it, extremists of that religion, because we have a lot of wonderful Muslims. Our president is a Muslim, Shatima Device is a Muslim. I can go on and on with a list of Muslim leaders in that sense, whether they're from the north or the south. So we're talking about extremists in this sense, is that correct, sir?
But they have not been able, the moderate ones have not been able to call the extremists in Nigeria to order.
But even if we, if that question were to be debated to a logical conclusion of national unity, and there's a consensus reached on that, the ethnic question may not have been, will not be able to solve the more important question of where we're headed as a region in that sense of the word, because you've just talked about the Ijebu and the Egbas. Now, there's a clamor for the establishment of an Ijebu state. Yes. The more important question would be, where are we headed as a nation or nation state? And what is the approach to getting us there in terms of a system of government? That is the more important question. And then all the others, either be it religion or ethnicity, may be solved along the line. Have we reached that point where we're clear about how to get to where we're headed?
I've lived in the United States for over 50 years, and there are many Nigerian tribes. You won't know, except that they all say we are Nigerians. It is when we return home that there's clamor. Personally, again, I believe we should go use, is it the Swedish or Switzerland, where all states are autonomous. If you look at the advantages of numbers, yes, we have defense. If the Southwest were to go on their own, their defense won't be like the Nigerian army. If the Southeast were to go alone, they may not get the same advantage of numbers and size from international relations. So my prescription is that the zones should be made independent.
So you're talking about restructuring.
Restructuring.
So let's build on that. I know that Leonard Olisa had raised this concern.
Yes.
In fact, under Muhammadu Buhari, I think it was the former governor of the Kaduna State, Nasser El-Rufai,
yes,
that led a committee on restructuring. In fact, it was so funny because I don't know whether it became political in that sense, because all of a sudden, we seem not to know what restructuring means anymore. Everybody had a different version of what it means. So let's talk about restructuring as it was, yes, when we were in the regions.
Yes.
And so every zone controlling their resources.
Yes.
My question is, how far-reaching can that go?
It can go very far. Have you ever asked why it is that the Constitutional Conference of 2000, during
former President Goodluck Jonathan.
Yes. Why
National Confab.
The National
2014.
Confab. Even Olisa Agbakova was there.
Yeah.
All of them still say it's the best that ever came out. Why has it been jettisoned till today? Bola Tinubu is our president. At the time, he probably supported the confab. Why is it? Again, it is my opinion that it has to do with religion.
So you're saying now, from your opinion and on good authority to the effect, because the question I wanted to ask, why is it difficult to restructure Nigeria even when there's an overwhelming clamor that may be our path to peace and prosperity? Why do you think it's hard? Because you are, by your age, you are one of our benefits of hindsight.
Yes.
You were there before we even became independent as a country. So you saw it all.
Yes.
And you saw the good and the bad and the ugly.
Yes.
Why do you think it's hard for any president to be bold enough? This president is kind of bold because his reforms are bold.
Yes.
They are hurting. Everybody's feeling the pain, and we're all clamoring that this is getting too much. So it's shown some boldness in certain things. Why do you think he's not bold enough, at least yet, to say let's restructure?
Because he needs the Hausa Fulani power to remain in the presidency. Because I would have thought the moment President Tinubu got to power, the first thing is to dust the confab and implement. But because there are interests that will not be served satisfactorily by the confab of, was it 2014?
2014, sir.
2014. It's all about interest. Bringing it forward. Why do you think most of our governors acquiesce to Fulani requests? I'm from Edo State. 14 people, herdsmen they call them, were in Urumi, and they saw that they had
Arms.
What did the governor do? He quickly put a team together, went to the north to appease them. It won't happen again. No one has ever talked about people who have been disenfranchised, killed on their farms. How many people have we seen go to court, prosecuted for killing people in the southwest, in the southeast? None. And it is open knowledge that all the people that were caught killing from the Fulani side were never prosecuted. The ones that were caught by the police were released by the police. So it's a bigger picture, and what continues to ring in my head is the fact that when I was growing up, I heard of Uthman Danfodio and his followers insisting that it may take 200 years, but they must dip the Quran in the ocean.
Well, at the end
So
of the
in
day,
your own view, we're in a catch-22 situation.
Yes.
So what would it take, to break the ice, so to speak?
What it would take is either the Yugoslavian system, Yugoslavia, what's the name?
Czechoslovakia.
Czechoslovakia, there's the Czech Republic. Nobody died.
Well, it sounds like a long walk to freedom. I must always posit that we have very great Fulani people,
yes,
very great Hausa people. So I want to say that I'm sure you're referring to the extremists,
yes,
who have given a bad name, just like we have extremists across everywhere around our country. But let's talk about something as we begin to wind down, and that has to do with, someone said, and I don't know whether you agree, so I'm asking you, do you agree, and what do you make of the statement? They said the way the colonial masters, again, we're going back to, let's not blame our colonial masters, but programming is a strong thing. They said the colonial masters, the way the Nigeria is designed to constantly be unstable but will never fall. Does that hit you?
Yes, I agree that even the Americans came to the north to ensure that a particular sect is in control of Nigeria. So I agree that there are Western unseen hands in the way Nigeria is run, just like in Burkina Faso, who is fighting to make sure that Westerners does not derail them from progressing.
And so as we move forward, the Afenifere, recently had a memorial lecture before the burial
Yes.
of the late elder statesman, and, proposed some form of reforms through a study of what the late elder statesman himself, nationalist Obafemi Awolowo, had concluded to be the way forward, of how Nigeria, as a heterogeneous nation, can be governed. What do you propose to be, the approach to get this document through, for a buy-in, to secure a buy-in of the National Assembly as a way forward?
There's a problem. That problem has become a major obstacle. And that problem is Babangida left government. He dribbled everybody. Then Abdul Salam came in, opened the road to politicking. Nobody believed him. So what you have are criminals, because the original politicians who wanted to bring Nigeria forward were afraid of wasting their money, losing their money in politics. So the only people who came in right after, who responded to Abdul
Salam's call
were 419ers, cocaine pushers.
Well,
seriously. And so even Ayim said it, that in his Senate, that a preponderance of the senators in that, was it the 8th Senate or 7th Senate, were criminals.
Those are very weighty words, sir.
That is what...
Those are elected representatives who had served Nigeria at a particular point in time.
We wish... Okay, just land on your
thought. A lot of them are not here. Yeah.
Because those are weighty allegations that need to be substantiated.
It has been said in the open. You've never heard it?
We're listening to you, sir.
You've heard that most of our legislators, without meaning to disparage anybody, take one of them and find out his history.
Okay, I think that's a good place to anchor.
But we must add, Jeffrey, that we must continue to have a sense of optimism as far as Nigeria is concerned, that indeed there must be a pathway forward where all of the federating units can come to a consensus about how Nigeria can move forward. But we must thank you for your time, your thoughts as well on this program. We've been talking with a senior citizen, chairman and CEO, Astromatic Nigeria Limited, Engineer Richard Ujadu-Gili. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Clearly, it's an ongoing conversation, and of course, we'll return to have it again and make progress. We'll take a break now. When we return, there's more. This time, we'll take a look at culture. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Let's now have a conversation with one of the custodians of our heritage in Nigeria, His Royal Majesty Hamon Ahmadu Gladstone Teneke is the Hamabata, joining us from Demsa in Adamawa State. Your Royal Majesty, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you. You're welcome.
You know, before we were brought into what some people call this contraption of states and countries, we were actually kingdoms. And today there is a challenge where it feels like there's an argument over whether democracy is effective because of how we practice it down here in Global South. But I want you to speak to us before we get to the festivals and all the things that are happening in Demsa or in Adamawa State, particularly in your kingdom, as to what you would like to see as a form of including traditional institutions and leaders in core governance and not just the way they are being treated today? Did you get my question, sir?
Come again? I didn't hear you very well.
I was saying that how would you want the traditional institution to be treated in a democracy?
Well, traditional institutions are even existent even before the coming of the European.
Yes, go ahead, sir. I said, how would you want it to be treated in a now we are practicing democracy. Those days were ruled by institutions like yours. We defer to our kings, we defer to our chiefs. But now we're talking presidents, we're talking governors, we're talking local government chairs, we're talking all of this structure that democracy has brought to us. So it looks like, of course, not like it looks like, it is a fact that the position of traditional institutions and traditional rulers have been pushed back. Now there's a conversation to bring it to the fore. How would you want it to be done?
Before even the arrival of our British people, traditional institutions are the way in the ruling system of our democracy. But with the arrival of these Europeans, they kind of usurp the powers of the traditional institutions and make it worse, in a case that sometimes you find chaos. And when it is getting too difficult for the government to protect, it is then they come back to us in a kind of a brigade system, trying to quench the problems, because they know it is within the powers of the traditional institutions to liaise with their subjects and make sure that peace prevail in all their communities.
And, you know, just to mention that Governor Fintiri has, you know, done a lot to elevate traditional institutions through the creation of chiefdoms, you know, to empower grassroots governance. We can even talk about how that has helped, you know, with the enhancement of security in, you know, at the grassroots level in Adamawa. But let's manage our time. I'd like you to reflect on that and talk to us about what to expect from the planned Vunam Festival in Adamawa State. What are the plans and what are the side attractions as far as that festival is concerned?
We must never forget the efforts of our governor, Right Honorable Ahmed Umar Fintri, for preserving and protecting the traditional institutions. It was during his reign that traditional rulers are now coming back to the system as it were before the arrival of the Europeans. But for sure, whatever the institutions have to do, it must go along with the system of the government. Unless they have that protection and the enabling environment, obviously traditional institutions still remain where they were before. But I must tell you that within our traditional institution here in Adamawa, we have actually enjoyed that system protection and the enabling environment. That is why security is even more relevant here and more protected than in other communities that are beyond Adamawa State. It is also in record that our governor has now given the traditional institutions more advanced protection for even creating more chiefdoms and the areas into the system again, which make it quite easy for the traditional institutions to liaise and inform the government of their protection and their security. Culture is actually what every society must protect, because a society without culture is not an original society. It has no origin if there is no culture, because culture is the people. So the Vinod Festival, which we have just ended, is to summon and to also beckon the arrival of the rainy season, whereby we are asking all our communities and our subjects to go back to land, because we need to feed ourselves or to grow what we eat and eat what we grow. In such a case, yes.
Just to piggyback on what you're already talking about, so let's talk about how much of the people were involved in this, because every opportunity like this is a potential opportunity for tourism. That is one of the areas we have to look at beyond oil and gas that we have in our reserve. So talk to us about the level of publicity that goes into the promotion of this festival, as well as how many people turned up. Do you have foreigners coming or people from other states? How widespread is it?
Yes, this particular one of 2025 has actually improved a lot. We liaise with even the federal government, Ministry for Culture and Tourism. They sent their representatives here. We are also working with other non-governmental organizations and other entrepreneurs so that we will make it a success. In all, these communities that are surrounding us, our neighboring communities, were also involved a lot. We have traditional rulers from other places, especially our neighboring communities, who have attended this particular cultural festival. And I must tell you that we have almost more than 15 traditional institutions and traditional rulers who attended this particular occasion. And we also intend to extend further the activities of this into the palace and other traditional rulers around us in other various states, so that we will kind of have a combined and a cultural heritage that will encompass even our people here and our communities beyond.
You know, and your Royal Majesty is really beautiful to behold. We can see high points of the festival there. Pardon me, I must take you back to the matter of security. Though you acknowledge that the efforts of the governor to empower traditional institutions has improved security, but, you know, it doesn't tell the entire story. And just yesterday, we hear from the Senate the need to establish military formations in Hong local government following attacks in that local government, and I believe in Gombe, in Adamawa State. What is your theory about what is responsible for the return of insurgency in Adamawa State, and how can traditional rulers, you know, play better roles to, you know, ensure the security of their domain?
Obviously, there is a lot to be done, but I know that in those areas where all these clashes are coming up, is those people from the neighboring states, which normally come in, they now strike and rush back. But the governor is on top of it, and we, all the traditional rulers, have been informed to be very alert and make sure that any other little movement, especially the herders and some of these bandits, any other information that is very vital should be extended to the government so that they will take real action. But I'm assuring you, the ones in Hong and the ones in Gombe are these bandits who come, and Boko Haram, who normally escape from the other neighboring states, coming in here, but we're always on top of the situation.
All right, Your Majesty, so let's talk about the Farah Festival, the Vonon Festival that you're highlighting on. And if anything has lasted for an upwards of like 300 years, because I understand it's been there for like centuries, the question of how it's been sustained is quite critical because sustainability is key. So talk to us about how the heritage has been able to hold this for this long, and what is the plan in the future to better reposition it in terms of branding to attract as many people as possible?
I have informed you already that the one we have this year is even better than the one we have last year, which means for every year, there must be a progression and an improvement on our culture, what we've been doing. Definitely, we cannot do it alone. That is why we need the assistance and cooperation of other traditional institutions so that the festival will go a long way into determining exactly our cultural heritage and encompassing the other communities that will have to work together because we cannot do it alone. For this year, you can see it from the pictures there that some of these activities that were created this year were not there last year. But this year, you can see the women dancing with their wrappers in their hands to show that actually we are a culture and we have our traditions. Even the kings that came from the neighboring states, definitely you can see them there. They also attest to what has happened this year and are ready to partner with us so that we can improve on this one by next year.
We're very hopeful that it's going to get better, Your Majesty. His Royal Majesty, Hamon Amadou Gladstone Teneke Dihama Bata, joining us from Demsa in Adamawa State. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
You are welcome. Thank you.
All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll switch gears. We're talking culture, but contemporary culture this time. We're talking to an actor, a filmmaker, and we'll explore the world of Nollywood around the world. Join us in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Yes, indeed. It's always fun to celebrate the bright lights, the action and the thrills of Nollywood. And we're, celebrating one particular movie and the, cast of the movie on this particular segment. Let's welcome Nollywood actor Tayo Faniron. Lead actor in The Fire and the Moth, of course, is featured in many other films. And Taiwo Egunjobi is a producer, The Fire and the Moth, of course, the movie that you just saw. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm going to start with you, Tayo, for good reason. I'm sure a lot of your fans, are watching and seeing you up close, maybe for the first time on set. Welcome once again.
Thank you.
You typically cut the picture of the bad boy, Casanova in the films, but I've seen your dynamism in different films. You've acted the dedicated lover, boyfriend, and you've acted the ambitious part. talk to us about how you are able to, switch roles.
All right, so thank you very much. It's important for me to maintain a standard, all right? And my track record explains that, all right? I'm one of the, few models who have made it from Nigeria outside to model outside of the country. I've been modeling in South Africa since like 2008. I did Big Brother Africa in 2014. I'm someone who has always liked, something to be of great quality. Originality is important to me. And it's the same approach that I've applied to my acting career. I have a standard that I don't want to go below. I have the type of platforms that attract me. And at the same time, I don't want to be a mediocre actor. I make efforts to develop myself. I make efforts to make researches, to think deeply as well, and plan the type of actor that I want to be. So it comes from, to me, it's spiritual. I've prepared myself spiritually. I've already prepared the kind of person that I want to be in my mind. And when roles come, it's easy for me to identify them that, okay, this is good for the path that I'm following.
Have you ever been on a role or in a role where you thought to yourself, can I ever do this? Have you ever had a very, we all have those moments when it shakes us at the core. Have you had those moments before?
I haven't actually, because just like what I said now, you see, challenges for me are opportunities for me to become greater, all right? When I see someone that is tough, that I feel like this thing is tough, it just needs me to put a little bit more effort than maybe the next person to be able to conquer this. Sometimes that place or that thing that people are running away from, at the end of it, at the other side of it, is a greatness that it's not meant for everybody. So for me, I don't see challenges. When roles come, I take it. Once I can say yes to a project, I'm giving my 100% to it.
So talk to us now about the movie that we just saw, the Fire and the Moth. What are we to expect from the movie?
The Fire and the Moth is an African thriller, and I directed, I didn't produce it. It was produced by Nimje Studios and Cebu Media, and it's just a story that is about our heritage, it's about our culture, and it's really an intriguing drama as well, focusing on, a smuggler that gets an Ife bronze and he runs up with it, and then the type of violence that ensues after it. So it's really just a fun film that really gives you a lot of things to think about.
Now, for directing, it seems, not just for directing now, even for the entire industry, it seems like there's, a shift, a generational shift, growing up with the Zebe Jiros, the Maswens of this world, the Chikwe Jiros of this world, and we're seeing, a shift sort of with the entry of new directors. What's the legacy? What do you find to be the legacy that has been passed on from that generation of movie directors and filmmakers, that is now, manifesting in today's Nollywood?
I think Nollywood was born out of incredible grit and entrepreneurial drive. And I think that's one thing that the new generation directors and producers have had to acquire to sustain, because we all know Nigeria is still kind of developing the infrastructure to entertainment and filmmaking. But old Nollywood, classic Nollywood, I call it, grew so much because they just kept going. They kept on pushing, they kept on fighting for opportunities. And that's something that I see as well in the new generation of directors, that grit to go look for the funds, to find a way to distribute the films, and to keep on doing it. It's an amazing miracle.
All right, we're not alone. We'll toss this over to our colleague in Abuja, Kade. Kade, I'm sure you have a few questions for both of them.
Absolutely. I'm tempted to just pause on the show, go watch the movie, then join you guys again, but I want to have that luxury. I must say congratulations to Taiwo, Tayo, and the whole crew.
Thank you.
It's beautiful to see the trailer, and I'm sure that even the movie, for people who eventually get to see it, and I imagine millions across Nigeria and the world, it'll be a great one. First, I must say, Taiwo, Tayo, you guys look so much alike. What's going on?
Okay, so I'll answer that. You see, when I actually read the script, I went to the set prepared, right? And then when I met the director on set, I saw him and I was like, you know, you are Saba, you know? the character that I've read, I saw it in him, you know, the style, the courage and everything, so, which was also helpful, you know, for me getting into my character. You know, so I would agree that we look alike.
And then again,
you know?
he's like an elder brother to me. We found out on set that he had known my family for a long time ago, and he had been friends with my elder brother. So, yes, maybe we are family in one way.
You know, we're all Africans.
That's beautiful, guys. It's really beautiful. And your names are almost similar. Taiwo. Tayo.
Egunjobi, Tayo Faniron. Thank you very much for paying attention to that. You know.
And Tayo, you know, almost similar.
Yeah.
But Taiwo, I'm curious, how were you able to get Jean on this movie? Because that's something a lot of people saw and they're like, wow. How were you able to pull that off, Taiwo?
Thank you very much. I mean, when I wrote the script, my studio that I worked with, Nimja Studios, had seen the script and I had said, oh, I'm going to use a Nigerian actor for this. And they said, no, we've read the script and we think it's good enough to go international. So we're going to look for someone who had that international clout in that sense, you know, a veteran Hollywood actor. And so they had been friends with John for a while. John had been looking to do more things in Nigeria. And so they sent him the script and he fell in love immediately. So, and that was it, you know. It was all studio and the script doing their work.
And I must say, just before I go back to Lagos, the title, The Fire and the Moth, is it linked to the Yoruba saying, Afopino tolong okba fitila?
Yeah, Kaide is a friend from UI. Yeah, definitely. It is linked to that. I mean, Afopino, yeah, definitely. You are right on the money there. Definitely. That's the inspiration for the title.
So let's... okay.
Love it. Jeffrey.
Okay, let's come back to Lagos. Let's leave Abuja for a moment. Anyway, let's talk about something I always like to ask, and that has to do with validation and juxtapose that to what we're building. Yeah. One of the reasons I love Nollywood, and I keep saying this all the time, when I go to cinemas, I don't like watching foreign movies. I like to watch Nollywood movies, and I want to support the industry because I've seen this industry. I've been around for a few years. I've seen it grow from ground zero to when nobody believed in them, to now everybody wants to rally around them the best way they can. But we still see a situation where actors and maybe some element of the industry try to get that Hollywood break-in. Why is that important? Both of you can answer.
Okay.
Okay, so it's important, okay? Because, you know, the world that we practice today, both of us are actually pro-Africans, all right? We're very, very intentional about being Africans. I said I lived in South Africa for 12 years. I've moved back home. This is my brother who, you know, lives for Ibadan. You get what I'm saying, you know? And I'm from Oyo town. Now, everything in my mind is how to go back home and do things at home and do things for home, you know. However, it's also important for us to get our international breakthrough because that is just the highest standard that is used to measure a person's success in our career life.
That is the question and the problem, which is I want you to respond to. People feel that why do we need that validation?
So it's not so much like we need it, but because it's not a global village. Yeah. So if you're doing great films in Nigeria, at some point you will be required to participate internationally. It's like how the music industry also had it. You know, if you're so good doing music, it comes a time where you just almost outgrow your current context and you become a global brand. Yeah. And really, it's important for us as filmmakers to not simply play on the local field, but also play internationally because we also need to get funds from foreign partners. We also want to open and expand our market. So it's not simply only about validation, but also about increasing and expanding the possibilities of our industry and our work. Yeah. I want to have an audience in Japan. I also want to have an audience in America, you know, and I won't do that by simply thinking local. I also have to find a way to be global enough in how I tell stories, in how I display myself, in how professional I am, you know, so we can all expand the industry and make it bigger for everybody to play in.
Yeah, you know, the question is right and your response is apt. Yeah. But do you find limitations in that space? We've had a Nigerian American on this set who is also playing in that field in America. but she's playing in her own space. She's talked about the difficulty in breaking into Nollywood, you know, and sometimes even when African-American actors of home extraction, you know, get into Nollywood, they get waka pass rules, so to speak. But when, you know, the reverse is the case, there's a need for a Caucasian element in Nigerian movies. You even find them having, you know, the lead roles. So what do you find to be the limitations of Nigerians, even our A-list actors, breaking into that space on a big scale?
As an
Maybe
actor,
you want to start, Tayo.
As an actor and someone who has worked outside of the country. Since 2008, working in South Africa, I've worked with directors from different parts of the world. All right, so I would say that it's just important for us to not lie to ourselves as actors. The industry is oversaturated, you know, with a lot of mediocre actors. All right?
They'll come for you, I hope you know.
I don't mind, you know, but I can tell you, people saw my growth. All right, I didn't start as a perfect actor, all right? But I found it because that is what I want to be. A lot of people don't even pay attention. They don't even, you know, give that, you know, time. You get what I'm saying? To sit back and say, this is how I want to be. They just want to go for the quickest thing, which is, you know, to be commercial and to be all over the place, all right? So when it comes to international, look at South Africa. When it comes to even their music, you don't understand what they're saying, but you can hear the quality. You can hear the soul in their music. Same with the film industry as well. When they do the Lion King or a Woman King, there's a Lion King.
Okay, of course.
There was also Coming to America. You know, you see, they're always using South African actors because there it's always been about depth. You get what I'm saying? In South Africa, it's always been about depth. When it comes to film, you would agree with me. They have always paid so much attention to, you know, that part. You get what I'm saying? So you see the actors too. When I actually didn't even know how to be a good actor yet, the types of actors that I was admiring also mattered to who I'm shaping myself to become today. So actors shouldn't lie to themselves. You get what I'm saying? I don't think a day will come that I will have a break into the Hollywood industry and they will use me as a waka pass role because I've been tested and trusted. I know myself that even when it comes to international platforms, I can compete strongly, all right? I'll stand next to anybody. And The Fire and the Moth is a testimony to it. Go and watch it. You will see his work as a director. You will see that, okay, this person has that vibe, that substance that can take Nigerian film industry to the global stage. And when you see my character, Saba, you know, I played with a lot of great actors, including Jimmy John Louis, who is already in Hollywood, all right? He has featured in a lot of big films, all right? And then go and watch the film, and then you see the collaborative efforts. Nobody is trying to outshine anybody or whatever, but together we made a solid piece. So what I'm telling you is that Nollywood is getting ready now. We are ready. I am ready, all right, to say bring it on. Bring Wakanda, bring any type of, you get what I'm saying, come and test us. I'm one African actor, Nigerian actor that can beat his chest that I will take
Sharp.
That's it.
I like the energy.
30 seconds, the same question.
I mean, I just think, you know, you've got to just have the kind of belief he has, you know, as an actor. You know, if you think you deserve to have leading roles, do a project. For example, a Nigerian film is doing very well at Cannes Festival in France now. My Father's Shadow. It's all Nigerian cast, but it's winning international laurels in France right now. So it's a global village. Do something great, people will eventually recognize you.
All right. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on the show. Clearly, it's a brilliant conversation that we've had, and we're going to have some more. We've been talking with Nollywood actor Tayo Fanyero and director Taiwo Egojobi. So go see The Fire and
the Fire and the Moth. It's coming on Prime Video on the 3rd of June.
All right.
The biggest film out of the continent right now. I can
you'll pay. Don't worry, I'll send you an invoice. I'll send you an invoice from marketing. But I want to thank you guys for coming. Okay, guys. One last one for the week before we run out. But thank you so much for your time. And, of course, your usual company. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Bye-bye.
Don't forget Sunrise Daily is up next. I am Bukola Koka. Bye for now.